So let's talk about what's going on in the right hand. And for the right hand, we are constructing our melodies, which in the jazz context have different labels. They're called riffs, turnarounds, and I also identify a separate category called fill. But generally, you'll see the words riff and turnaround. They're just jazz labels for melodies. Melodies in this tradition come from one of two different palette sources. The first source is probably a more obvious one, which is, I didn't write down in the handout, but it's the chord palette. So for example, like if your boogie or blues pattern is off the key of C, you could, in the right hand, play with that a C chord. But we're not just talking about the C basic chord or the three-note chord, but we're talking about C and its extensions, meaning the C chord, the C6 chord, the C7 chord, dominant 7, not major 7th, and the C9 chord. And you probably won't get into extensions beyond that, because once you get into 11s and 13s, then you're producing more of a modern jazz sound rather than a traditional jazz sound. And we can think about jazz really being divided into two categories. The jazz that was conceived very much as a dance art form, which would include everything back to even ragtime, stride piano, blues piano, boogie woogie piano. That would be, we would demarcate that as traditional jazz. And then all of the jazz, the dominant language of jazz today would be modern jazz, would fall under the umbrella of modern jazz. And that would include the bebop tradition that we hear today almost everywhere. Okay, so once you get into extensions beyond beyond the 9 chord, you're into modern jazz sounds, and for that we're going to stay away from it. Now I can illustrate that for. Of course, I'm talking to piano teachers, so I'm going to assume that you're probably able to identify those. But let me, just for the purposes of illustration, show you those chords. Of course, this is the C. The C6 chord would be the inclusion of the A with those three. Dominant 7 would be the inclusion of the B flat with this 3. And the 9 chord, we would actually voice the 9 chord by omitting the C. And so think of building your chord in all thirds. Why is it okay to omit the C? Because you're droning it so much down here. So for example, the most famous piece of boogie woogie music is called Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. And the riff there is really derived from the 9 chord in that kind of shape. So we have something that sounds like this. Transposed. That being the most famous piece of boogie woogie music, because in 1928, when Pinetop's Boogie Woogie came out as a recording, the phrase boogie woogie was just a slang or colloquialism of the Chicago area. Because of the popularity of that record, people began to adopt that phrase to identify this specific piano playing style. But there's an illustration of how you can make a riff from the chord palette.